everybody. Welcome to another Anatomical Gangster. Today, I am talking to Dr. Jean-Claude Guimberteau. He's the co-founder and scientific director of the Institut Aquitaine de la Main, and he's the former president of the French Society of Plastic and Reconstructive Surgery. He has developed our knowledge of the structure and function of not only tendon physiology, pioneering secondary repair techniques for flexor tendons, but he really is, I think, a pioneer, and one of his most important contributions to our understanding of human biology has been through his innovation and use of video-endoscopy, atomic force microscopy, looking at connective tissue in the most microscopic way. And his investigation of the fascial structures in vivo, which has resulted in what essentially constitutes a new concept of living tissue and a new ontology of architecture of the human body. I'm really excited to speak with him today, and I think it's going to blow your mind what you're about to hear. So thanks again, and let's tune in. Hello, JC.
Recording in progress.
Hello.
How are you?
Oh my gosh, well, I'm better for seeing you. Wonderful to see you.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, long time ago.
I know. I feel like I miss everyone so much in the community. And, I have to tell you how often I think of you in a week, because, your work is so influential in my practice. And I'm always sharing your work. And I feel like, you're kind of always in my life almost every day. So
happy to know that.
It's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for doing an interview for Anatomical Gangster. I feel like if anybody is one of the leading, pushers of the biological envelope that is, the collegiate world of education, it's you. So thank you so much for, I think, reinforcing perspective and making new perspectives of the human body and biology in general.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Well, it's always very difficult to know what people are thinking about my works. It's really very difficult, because sometimes I think that it's more popular, and sometimes I feel that it's not so well accepted. So it's really difficult to know.
Well, and I think that's it. When I talk about this idea of anatomical gangster, right? I'll share with you, in the late 90s, my dad had passed away, and it kind of veered me out of the fitness world. And I had already had a master's in physiology and anatomy. And when he had died, I got into reading Thich Nhat Hanh and Buddhism, and they were always talking about the life force in the body, the yin yi, and this fluid matrix in a body. And as I started to uncover my understanding of fascia, I just always said, it seems to me that the fluid system that they're talking about in Chinese medicine is the fascial system, but nobody's really talking about this continuous, cohesive system in the body. And then jump ahead, 2007, the first Fascia Research Congress at Harvard University, I'm sitting next to Gil Hedley, and you come up on stage and present Strolling Under the Skin. And Gil just nudges my shoulder and says, so this cohesive system, here's your fluid matrix, right? And it blew my mind that anybody had taken an endoscope in the human body on a microscopic level and looking at living fascia in this way. And if ever there was a moment in my life where somebody's work completely reinforced an idea of a fluid system being a stability matrix, it was your work. And it really is something that I think in the world of the massage therapy world, the word myofascia has become so popularized. And I'm like, myofascia is just about how fascia relates to muscle, but what about the microscopic level and how it relates to our lymphatic system and our nervous system, and how our body just develops in general? Embryology, why isn't anybody talking about this? And again, your work in every single video that you've continued to produce has gotten more and more into trying to explain, I think, the biological basis of life in general, and it reinforces it.
Have you seen the movie about cells?
Yes, when you were at the Berlin Congress, and the question, yes, who am I? I mean, you actually put it in the video. It really deems the question, what am I? Who am I? And I think it again, it's like, this is so critical, what you created.
In fact, it seemed to be a very, trivial question, who I am. But in fact, if you want really to think of that, this is a big problem, because it's difficult to think for many people, but inside of our body, there is a life. There is a life, and we ignore it. And in fact, we are the result of this life. What I am saying now is a result of many processes in my body. I can't define them, but there are. And we have to accept this situation. And when I am talking, of course, I know what I am saying, but a lot of processes are working all together to give this result. And when I am looking with my endoscope, I can appreciate how is it complex, how is it intertwined. And it's not so simple as we have been taught at the university. It's not only one organ here, the brain here, the heart here, and the foot just there. No, it's more complex. And we are not made of different layers. That's wrong. We are a global system. And if modestly I can say, but I have tried to show that we are a global system. And the link of this global system is a fibrillar network everywhere. Different kinds, depending on the function, depending on the anatomical situation, but it's everywhere a fibrillar network. And the cells are not everywhere.
Yes, so you're saying so many things here. I want to slow you down, because I mean, you've said like 10 really important things, and I want to make sure that we can, again, our listeners who haven't followed your work and have been so knee deep in what you're trying to explain, which to me makes perfect sense. I mean, I'll share another one with you. Is when I was in college, when I was in my master's, you do a dissection and you get to go into the lab, and here's a body that's already been, dissected by the medical students who are above you. And so all the connective tissue has been chucked in the bucket, and you're looking at muscles, and there's what you think the body is. I then meet Gil Headley and do a dissection with him where we just remove the skin and then really look at connective tissue. And I at the time sat with him and I said, I don't even understand really why we're looking at this tissue. And he goes, well, it's the system of the body that's actually creating our form. And I said to him, it's not a system. And he says, why isn't it a system? I said, well, it's a non-living matter that is just a packing material in the body. And he goes, why would you have a non-living matter in the human body? And I literally sat back and I was like, because my anatomy teacher told me so. Wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. And here again is this idea that the way that we have understood connective tissue and calling it a tissue and not a global system of the body, a system in and of itself that this concept of collagen being a fiber, and now we're saying it's a fibril, which is, I think, a very important term to explain, and that this tissue, these fibers need the fluid to make collagen, it have its tensile strength, but also its ability to morph and adapt constantly without neurological intervention. It is just doing its thing, and it's still undefined. And then you also have this concept of these cells and the migratory cells, that cells are not necessarily everywhere. You've shown it. And all of these things are so important to human biology that, again, when you go through a master's and then, you take biology, and I never learned any of this stuff. And so it literally it unraveled me from the traditional box of biology to expand this idea and push us to understanding both our cellular matrix and this extracellular microcosm that is like dark matter in the universe that we're just now starting to understand. So can you do this for me? Talk a little bit about this biotensegrity concept of fibrils and what a fibril is, as opposed to saying the word fiber.
Well, it's the same. It's the same. Fiber, it's bigger normally than a fibril. That's all. But it's the same continuity. Why? Because when you have a fiber, inside of the fiber, there is a potential of fractalization. That means that this fiber is able, by intrinsic qualities, is able to divide in 3 or 2 or 4 subfibrils.
Right, it just can split and change and adapt and not tear.
Yes, just only the mechanical constraint. And more of that, you never know how this fiber is going to divide, maybe in 2, maybe in 3, maybe in 3 or in 4 subfibrils. There is an undetermined behavior.
And what causes that behavior? I mean, is it if the fibroblasts and now, I know that we have these other terms, fasciocytes and myofibroblasts and all these terms of cells, but talk to me on a cellular level. How do you describe, I don't even know how to ask the question, how do you describe this cellular matrix in a way that can give us more of an understanding of what the cellular constructs of the self are? And I mean that as a human, how do the cells, I don't know what the question is, know how to do what they're doing, and what are the cells doing? Why do they migrate? Why are they not everywhere?
Well, it's a very, how can I say, it's a very delicate problem. Because if I say to you now, I think that there is a cellular conscience,
mm-hmm.
You are going to say, oh, you are mad.
I'm not going to say that you're mad. That actually makes perfect sense.
Many people can say that. Okay. But when you are looking to the cells inside of a patient, a living patient, not a cadaver, a living patient, there is a cellular behavior. The cells are not here by pure hazard. No, they are here because they have to be here.
Makes sense.
So there is a behavior.
Yes, that cells are smart. Yes, cells are smart. They're doing something. But what is, yes. And again, I think this is the point I think that I'm hearing you say, if I'm hearing this right, is that cells do what they do and we still don't understand why. We're not
until now.
Right.
Until now. But cells are doing a job inside of us. And we don't know that. But they do a job because they have to preserve our survey. They have to preserve our life. So there is a job to do. There is a mechanism. And very often I say to people, there is a mechanism. And sometimes people say, no, it's impossible. It's not a mechanism. It's only fibers and cells, but there is no sense. And I say, no, there is mechanism and there is finalism. That means that when the cells are focused on a place, on a nerve, for example, or a tendon, they are there because they have some job to do. There is a sense. I don't say that there is a sense to the universe or to the great light and so on. No, there is a sense only to preserve the body in which they are.
Well, and that's actually a really incredible concept, because I also, when you're in biology and even neuroscience, that to me, the way that I was to understand it is that the nervous system itself, its primary job was to keep us alive. The nervous system's primary job is just to keep you alive. It's, it doesn't matter if you're doing terrible things to your body, you're taking heroin, your body's still going to preserve you and keep you alive. But to the point of what you're saying is that not only the nervous system, but also on the cells themselves are housekeepers.
All the cells in the body. All the cells.
Yes, and I've talked to a lot of people in our community, and I think like Jaap van der Wal, when I spoke with him, he had said the word that cells divide. We should really say that cells multiply. They're trying to keep themselves alive, so they're actually loving what they're doing, and they make more of themselves to keep us going. And understanding why a cell does what it does as it's moving along, and seeing, and I use these words, seeing, like a cell is seeing something, but that a cell has intuition to it. There is something that the cells are doing to preserve the shape of our biology, of our form. And it is, I mean, again, guys, I look at so many books in anatomy and physiology and biology, and you don't read that anywhere in any literature that I've seen where it's specifying this concept that we, in looking at anatomy and looking at cell biology, that we're always looking about what's going inside the cell, what's happening inside the cell. And I'm so curious of the integrin to integrin relationship, the communication that cells are having, and how are they communicating, not just with cell to cell, but also cell to fibril, cell to extracellular. There is a communication happening.
Yes, completely. There is communication. There is they transmit information. We don't know how is it working. I don't know. But I am sure that there is information inside of a group of cells. For example, all the cells in a group are disposed in a way, and sometimes you have cells completely round without pressure, and sometimes very close you have the cells completely compressed. Why? You don't know that. You don't know, but I observe that very often. Sometimes you have only 2 or 3 cells in front side during maybe the length of 5 cells more. And then after, you have a big group. How can you explain that? You can explain that only if you consider that there is a cellular behavior.
Yeah, and there's the word behavior, right? Which means that there's consciousness, right? And
Yes.
then again, that's
Right.
right.
So it's much easier to say behavior than consciousness, because the problem is almost a metaphysical problem.
Yes, it is. There it is. You know, I feel like I want to jump up and down here, because this is the very question. I think the thing that gets us stuck is this concept of what actually is consciousness. And I think this begs the question that you asked in your last video about the cells.
No, it's not the last. It's not the last.
Yes, exactly. I know you're going to do more.
I did one more. It's called Homo fasciaticus. No, it will be published in the next month on a new website. I am launching a new website with 1,500 videos under the skin and 200 animation for everybody. You can connect and you can see all these videos. They are classified. It's easy to do. And you can have, by this way, an idea of what is life under the skin. How is it organized? Because very often people say, well, you say that it's irregular. Yes, I say it's irregular because it's irregular. I can't say it's parallel or perpendicular. No, that's wrong. It's a dispersed pattern. Okay. But the question is, why is it irregular? Why is it dispersed pattern?
I guess does that just give us back to the basic confines of the chaos theory, right? That we think of chaos as being so disorganized and therefore chaotic, but really in its chaos, it is organized. That's what self-assembly is about, yes?
Yes, that's right. But very few people know that. Very few.
Well, this is what I keep yelling to people about. I don't know.
Maybe you know, but if you say to the people, to the general people, to some scientific journalist, you say, inside of the body, it's completely irregular. There is a network, a fibrillar network, there is no order. Like a human like to see or to think. And they say, well, no, sorry, you are wrong. No. So it's very difficult to transmit this kind of message, because this message, when you say it's irregular, it's a dispersed pattern, it's an undetermined behavior, you open the window to a new world.
Yes, a microscopic world.
Yes, but it's also the complex and non-linear system. Because we discover now that a tree, just around you, a tree, a simple tree, is a complex system. It's a living, complex, non-linear system, as you are, as I am.
Yes, I am a tree hugger. I mean, trees have a frequency and a vibration to me that is in so many ways. I mean, again, all living matter has life beyond what you're seeing. It is beyond the matter of my skin. That is, I think, part of the understanding of the human experience. I very frequently say I am just a spirit. I happen to be occupying this body and utilizing this mind to have a human experience, but I am not this body and I am not this mind. I am something else that is undefined. I am all living matter is the same. And I think that also when I saw your first video of Strolling under the skin in 2007, that really brought me going back to understanding cellular science, really pushing my knowledge of cellular science and trying to find more of that understanding. and again, coming up somewhat short in many instances. And, you know, you're talking about endoscopy, and you know, we're now using atomic force microscopy and looking at the finer levels in these endoscopes. And you being a surgeon, a hand surgeon, and first looking at the...
Well, I am not only a surgeon, I am a plastic and general surgeon, not only hand.
Yes,
I am.
Yes, exactly. Is that you are a doctor who's applying surgeries and still finding, I think, a struggle with the community that is supposed to know the human body so well that in fact...
No, Sue. I don't agree. I am not fighting because no.
Don't fight. Don't fight.
No. All my colleague surgeons, for example, are not really interested in this kind of thinking, because all of them, most all of them, or all of them, are interested in technical aspect. They have to do a job, and they have to do correctly the job, so they want to be really able to do a good technique. On the other side, you have scientists working in labs and working on dead
cadavers. Yes. And that's, I mean, I hope everybody's hearing that, is that JC is working on living human tissue, living human bodies to explore the body in vivo. This is huge.
Yes. And when you are a scientist, a good scientist, you are observing a cell under your microscope, and you can't have the same relationship with a surgeon with an endoscope and looking to a cell of your patient, a cell living in your patient living. The relationship is completely different. You are on one side, you are looking almost a dead cell without any environment, alone under the microscope. And on the other side, you have thousands of cells all together, living together in a patient, in a living creature. So I try to make the link between the surgeon observing the living and the scientists observing more precisely, but only the dead. And you can't have any conclusion on the living if you are only working on the dead.
I mean, and it's so important that what you're saying here is I think this is the paradigm that we're in right now. This is the turning point of saying, how can we start to investigate the human body, not just in a cadaver dissection, and even when people say, yeah, and I've done the unembalmed cadavers, and it doesn't matter, they're still not living. And so there is a representation, and I think this is something that always I speak about a lot, is that we create models to define things. And anatomy, that's, again, anatomical gangster, right, is to cut stuff up. That's what anatomy is, right? Cutting stuff up so that we can better define it. So whether you're cutting up the nervous system into central nervous system, peripheral nervous system, somatosensory, you're breaking it down. You have to still put it back together. And to me, the best model is a living human body model, is to try to understand more about what's going on in a living human body, and this inquiry of cells. And this last video that I saw of yours in Berlin at the Fascia Congress, it really was, it became a conversation for many hours after we saw it. I was with a group of friends there where I was like, are you guys not blown away by the idea that Guimberteau demonstrated that there were migratory cells? Some of them would just kind of like be hanging out with one another over here, but then there's no cells here, and then there's another grouping of them here. Like, I've never heard anybody describe cells in that way, that, you know, you sort of are told like cells are everywhere, but you're saying no,
No,
no, they're not.
No, because it's not possible for my colleagues, scientists in labs, to observe that.
Because they're working with cadavers, because they're working with non-living matter.
They are working on cadaver or on small pieces of fresh cadaver, for example, but it's not life. Life is different.
Yes. I mean, it begs the question that you asked, and that was, I really thought that you went to a very huge quandary, because it's a quandary that I feel is what keeps me always asking, is that kind of theoretical question, or that very metaphysical question of who am I? And, you know, when you start reading quantum physics, you know, you realize that like all of this is, everything I'm seeing, they're saying is just a controlled hallucination, because I can only just see a spectrum of light. And maybe what I'm perceiving as being here is just an altered reality. And we're the only living beings on the entire planet that can actually think about a future happening that may or may not ever be. It's like an altered future reality that we've created in our minds that may or may not ever exist. We're the only living being on the entire planet that produces ideas that may or may not ever happen. And because it's not about self-preservation at that point, or is it, right? You know, and so again, it comes back to that it's a very big question of, you know, who really are we? Are we really all connected? Is there oneness? What is duality? And do our cells also behave in a similar way of grouping, of separation? And what happens when a cell stays by itself too long? What happens?
Yes, but you can't approach this kind of problem if you don't have a scientific basis.
Say more.
And when I say scientific basis, that means that everybody agree concerning this kind of observation. Once it's admitted by everybody, you can begin to introduce new concept, for example, of cellular consciousness. But before, you have to convince your colleague, you have to convince people interested in living matter that it could be interesting to approach this problem of the conscience of a cell. And then after, step by step, you can develop new concept, new ideas, and new conclusion. But at the basic step, you have to be you have to be a scientist. You have to be really precise, really medical, and not the reverse way. If you begin to think, and then after you say, I'm going to prove it, that's wrong. First, you prove, and then you think. Do you understand what I said? Because my English is not so, sometimes my English is...
I think that was perfect. That's great. Well, and also I think isn't that the same thing as, you know, in the therapeutic world? I very often almost get into arguments because there are massage therapists and people who really believe, like they're saying, you know, like that they're plastically deforming tissue and they're changing this and that, and, you know, making these permanent changes by way of the tissues. And I would just argue with them. I think that what we do is, especially when you're working with somebody, is that you are adapting, you're blending energy that is beyond tissue, and you're talking about fluid and frequency and vibration, and you know, exactly. And I think that we don't, because the words energy for most people sounds very, you know, elusive or, you know, metaphysical, but really physics is, and you're talking about energy, and the fact that most of our world is space and not matter, that I think we continue to argue what really is happening because people are not measuring, and then it becomes a fight, right, between the scientific community and the therapeutic communities. And it's time that we stop fighting and work together, that there is inquiry here, that we need to discover more, and it's together that we'll do this, not separate.
Yes, but the scientific corporation community is not really well prepared to share. It's difficult to share with them because they are sure that they have the truth.
Yes.
And well, I can't say that because very often I am confronted with this problem with some colleague that are working for 30 years about cells. They have an idea on the cells. And when I present cells on a video, and when I am talking about cells, they say, I'm sorry, but the specialist is me. I am specialist of cells. You are surgeon. You are not a specialist of cells. So, you know, sometimes it's difficult for me.
I'm
because
sure.
There is a way of thinking. It's a way.
You know, I think that's, you know, in your background, you know, you're someone who has studied and you know, you're at the top of your field in as a surgeon. When was it for you that you really almost shifted from, to me, and to me, I think, you know, surgeons are artists. They are artists. There is an artistic quality in every surgeon's hand. There is something of an art in doing surgeries, and it becomes, you know, a process. And at the 2007 Fascia Research Congress, I remember a surgeon asking you a very simple question. They said, well, with all of these things that you're describing here, are you trying to imply that we need to perhaps think of a different way to create surgery to help support the tissue? And you just went, well, yes. Like, as a matter of fact, like, yes, maybe we should look at things differently.
2 minutes. Somebody is knocking at the door. I am back.
Okay. Is he not amazing, Kara? Yeah. Jesus Christ, right? Yes. Mm-hmm.
I am back.
Perfection. So I'm going to see.
But it's a technician for the central heating, and
Oh.
he was supposed to come this morning, and
here he is. It's kind of, there's only so many people we wait for, and those are some of the people.
Sorry for that. Well, no, I changed my mind only for a surgical problem. I was repairing for many years tendon.
Right, the reconstruction of flexor tendons, right?
Yes. And I was using, it was an American procedure developed by Hunter. And but this procedure was giving sometimes good results and very often medium results. But the main problem was that it was in 2 stages. And so for the patient, it was around 7 months out of work. So it was too much. And so I decided to find another way. And to find another way, first you have to understand how is sliding a tendon. Because there is a simple observation. When you are moving the fingers, you don't see the tendon moving because there is no movement at the surface of the skin. But deep in the end, the tendon is moving around 3 centimeters. So the conclusion is there is an absorbing system. And then I decide to understand how it was working. That's all. So at the beginning, it's a surgical questioning. That's all. And I discover, for me, it was really a discovery. I discovered that this sliding system was, in fact, the connective tissue. Yes, of course. But this sliding system was made of fibers in dispersed pattern with movement, with mechanical behavior. And this observation was able to be observed everywhere in the body. At the foot, because at that time I was making surgery transplant, and very often I had the opportunity to go to the foot, to go to the head, to go to the shoulder, to go to the abdomen, and so on, everywhere in the body. And everywhere in the body, it's the same way. So there is a way, a global way for the body. And so little by little, I decide to observe this supposed so-called connective tissue everywhere. And finally, I say it's not a connective tissue. It's a constitutive tissue with a mechanical behavior.
As a global system. And I think that's really—
as a global system,
right.
Yes.
That's really important for people to understand. And this is where, when in your first video in Strolling Under the Skin, you had talked about, Kenneth Snelson and Buckminster Fuller and this geometric dome, right? And these polyhedric shapes that we know. I mean, it's just like, in Egypt, they were building these triangular shapes because they—
Yes, but in fact, I was interested in tensegrity because when you are looking in the body, you observe fibers, cells, but cells are made of fibers inside and fluids. So you see fibers, cells, and fluids, okay? And you say, well, there is the force of gravity. How the small baby is able to fight, to struggle against gravity to become an adult from 3 kilograms to 100 kilos. How is it working? And the only answer is tensegrity. And Stephen Levine another surgeon, developed the concept of biotensegrity. Mm-hmm. It's why I agree with biotensegrity globally. But I think that we have to improve this concept because it's it's too theoretical, but it's not really practical. But it's the only concept able to explain how we can fight against gravity. And by so, you understand why we are, when we are getting older and older and older, we are becoming psychotic.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we are shrinking. I always say nobody complains about getting taller as they get older. We just lose space and think that that's part of it.
It's a revenge of gravity.
Yeah,
it's a revenge, that's all. We can't fight all the times against gravity because the growing of our bodies is planned to stop around 20 years old. That's all.
Yes, yes. And you know, for those of you listening, I mean, again, JC, you're saying so many important things that in, you know, when you're talking about how does a living human body work not just against, but actually with gravity. It is like gravity actually is one of the things that helps our bodies to grow. Without gravity, we would have nothing to move away from, in a sense, right? To create our life force. And this concept of, you know, to me, muscles are movers, bones are spacers. But, you know, what JC's talking about is that connective tissue is the only tissue in the entire body, the only one. Everything else has its separate systems, but fascia is the only system from macroscopic to microscopic that you can look at that is completely cohesive. There is no separation between the skin all the way into the bones. There's no separation in it, and we don't look at it that way. But Gil, I remember one time when I was in one of these existential crises over trying to help my students understand all of this changing terminology from connective tissue, fascias, visceral fascia, you know, all these, you know, extracellular matrix, and now this new term interstitium. And I said, well, it really, if you're cutting it with a blade and you're in the microscopic level, that's fascia. But if you go microscopically and you're looking at it through a microscope, now you're in the land of extracellular matrix. And that is the thing that needs to be, to me, inquired more, is that in the massage community and in the fitness community, we're so macro in our view of the human body that really they're not looking on this microscopic level. And in all living matter, and you pointed this out in Strolling Under the Skin, in all living matter, it's the same molecular constructs of these polyhedric shapes. Doesn't matter what you're looking at. If it's living, we all have it.
It's one of the reasons why I have decided to show all these 1,500 videos to you and to the.
I'm going to be busy watching videos for like a year.
No, to show how is really living matter, but we can't find different layers. This is one of my problem sometimes with some colleagues in Fascial Research Congress, because some are thinking that we have layers, different layers, fascia superficialis, fascia profundus, and so on. Well, okay, if you want, but it's wrong.
Well, and again, it's a model, right? It's a model.
It's a model. Yeah, it's a model, but it's only a model. It's not really what we observe. Yeah.
Amen to that. I mean, that's it. I think there's the quandary of you know, in my program in MELT that I created, that was one of the things that I struggled with was, so I developed what I called the living human body, the living body model, right? And so a living body model to me has 5 elements that are working autonomously that we don't in fitness, in massage therapy, in these communities where it should be more understood. We actually aren't talking about it. So I call the autopilot are these components of our body that support, protect, and stabilize us involuntarily. You have to understand how the autonomic functions of our body, how regulation happens, how cell division happens, biology. You have to have a little bit of that in your background. Body sense, talking about proprioception, interoception, exteroception, sensory reception. That's again, vibration, frequency, right? The way that our body holds us together instead of looking at muscles and bones. I say, what about just masses and spaces? You have bones and structures are masses, and then you have these spaces in the body that are really important, the space. And you had really gotten me landed on that when I was trying to describe this to people, and you said, you're missing one word, it's volume. That what fascia does is it increases the volume of space fluid can occupy to maintain those spaces. And that landed for me, that meant everything to me, because it really was, again, this inquiry of how better to define the body. And then I also talk about tensional energy, that fascia possesses a tensegrity to it, a architectural system that, again, from macroscopic to microscopic, it doesn't matter how small you view it, it actually has the same structure. It does. Every time you look into another space, you're seeing the same thing. And inside the cells, you mentioned that inside of our cells, we have these same structures to hold the cell to push against the environment, as well as the environment pushing into it. And then I always talk about what I call the neurocore, which is this neurological sense that is the communication highway, if you will, between fascia, the cells, and the nervous system, that there is communication, there is life happening under our skin that is still today undefined in science. It's not there yet. And so this idea that we know everything that there is to know about the human body already, and again, these people who argue kind of the pushing of the boundaries of cellular science because we already know cells because we've studied the cell, I think there it is we're limiting the very nature of the inquiry that we started with today, which was who am I? And I think that in that discovery between the extracellular system and the cells, I think that there's an answer there that is undefined. But I think if anybody has really brought it to the forefront, it's you. You've done it.
Yeah, but my role, I want to have only a role of presenting what I have seen. Mm-hmm. I present, I have seen that, I think that, but now look, appreciate, and make an idea, make your own idea. So I propose, and then after people are able to think what they want. Because if you say, I have the truth, it's debatable. But if you say, I show you, and if you have the same experience, and if it is different, if you have the same experience, because very often people say, well, we don't agree with you. Okay, I say, yes, but what is your experience? Well, we have seen on this book or this, you have seen a book. Yes, but you have no experience.
No experience, exactly right.
No experience. You have read a book, that's all. Yes, so, but if you have an experience of endoscopy, if you have observed living structure, and if you have a different idea, of course, I accept with pleasure to discuss with you. Of course.
Yes.
But only if you have a good experience.
You know, I'm curious, in the 2019 Congress, when we were in Berlin, or 2018, we were in Berlin, Neil Teese had talked about, and also Peter Friedel, Dr. Peter Friedel, when he was talking about these conduits, the pre-lymphatic channels that are moving interstitial fluids from fascia into lymph. In your work, do you see or have you created any new definition between those conduits of how the lymphatic system is reliant upon the fascial system to also function efficiently? I mean, to me, I can relate fascia to every system of the body, and most certainly I feel like it has a relationship with our overall health, because it is inherently linked to lymph. But do you speak on that at all in any of the future videos?
Well, we have tried. We did a work with one young colleague 6 years ago, in order to find the microscopic lymphatic vessels, and we never found any microscopic lymphatic vessel. Never. Because we can't, I don't say we can't observe them, but we are not able to say that this is a lymphatic vessel, or this is a fiber, or this is a nervous extremity, because all these elements are similar. There is no difference. So with endoscopy now, I say it's not possible. But in the future, I am sure that it will be possible. And
do you think it's because the technology will just allow us to look more deeply?
Yes, of course, of course. Well, for example, 25 years ago, I could not imagine to be able to speak of organization of living matter, because it was not possible to do that 25 years ago. I was just beginning, making some photo with lens, with a magnification, lens and lens and lens, with good result or bad result. It was completely aleatory. So it was not possible, but now it's possible. And in the future, it will be better. Sure of that. Sure, I am sure. We are just at the beginning of a sort of exploration of living matter. I think. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, I agree. And I think that, again, your work, for me, I always feel one of my contributions is to continuously explain to people other people's work that has really forged ahead our understanding of not just, I get people kind of compartmentalize you or Gil or oh, he's a fascia guy, he's this guy. And I'm like, no, these are people who have a deeper inquiry of life itself, that life exists both within us and outside of us. And it just deems the idea that it's not just our contributions and what we create, it's the connections that we make with other people that is really going to affect and push these boundaries. And I do believe also that just like you've already demonstrated, with technology and a curious mind, anything is possible to begin to understand, again, the biological basis of life itself, and what phenomenology is and who we are. And I think it just I think it's good that we question,
yes,
put definition.
It's not so easy for a scientific community to be a little bit marginal, to cross the border.
I see, yes.
It's difficult for them because there is a sort of hierarchy to respect. And sometimes I think that I have some colleagues in university hospital, and very often they say, what you have done, Jean-Claude, it's impossible for me. It's impossible because I have to ask permission to the chief. I have to ask permission to be administration. I have permission to ask to my colleague anesthesiologist. I have to ask many permissions. And me on my side, I was the chief, and during 15 years, I decided to do it by myself. no asking permission, because it was not dangerous for the patient. I had friendly anesthesiologists, easy to work with them. Everybody in the operating room was interested to see living matter, because the nurses, everybody was looking, very interested. So it was a collective adventure. And during 15 years at least, I did it. And it's why I want to share now on the website. People will be able to see that.
Well, I for one cannot wait to see what is going to come of this website. And I'm sure that I will spend many hours watching and getting my mind blown as always.
Yes, if you want to see all of them, yes, you have to prepare to spend many, many hours to observe, because what is interesting also is that I have observed things in these videos, but you are able to observe and to say, hey, Jean-Claude, you forgot to see that. Look, it's moving there. Because I see some, but not all the events. I see some only. So it's a collective adventure. It's why I want to share.
It's beautiful, and I think again you're saying it. It's within the connections. It's the collaborative event of being a pioneer and putting these amazing things out there, that it is really transforming. And again, it's just been a privilege for me. I'm so very grateful that I've had the privilege.
Really a pleasure. And I thank you for your invitation. It's really a pleasure.
I'm so happy to have had you on the show. And again, you'll see in the lineup of everyone, I think it's going to be a beautiful story from embryology on out. So again, JC, just thank you so much for the time and your knowledge and for everything that you're doing, both for my life and everyone else's, to just understand. And again, to continue that wonderful question of who am I? So thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Yes,
bye,
and for those of you watching today, again, thank you so much for being part of it, and we'll see you on the next Anatomical Gangster. See you soon.
Bye.